One of the things we are very worried about is the size and scope of your budget. Year over year cost increase of about $1 billion. We're looking at supplementals reflected of close to $500 million, and then carry forward supplementals heading into next year, about $300 million, totaling about $2 billion increase, which is not sustainable for taxpayers moving forward. On top of that, the governor signed into law administrative code that provided a provision to include that any kind of supplementals we must be notified and given details about. We haven't received that, and the language is, quote, a written statement detailing the amounts requested and the need for the additional appropriation. So this morning, I just want to start with kind of going through those supplementals, the cost increase, and one, why they're there, and two, what are we doing to try to curb those costs. So one, the early intervention line item enacted in the 2019 General Appropriations Act at $161.4 million. Your department is now requesting a supplemental appropriation of $16 million more, or nearly 10% for the total appropriation of $177.4 million. Why, and what are we doing to curb those costs?
Yeah, so good morning. Thank you for that question. Our increase in costs with early intervention are directly attributed to the number of people that we're serving. So over the past few years, participation in that program has increased substantially. From 2015-16 through 2019-20, participation in early intervention has increased by nearly 11,000 participants. We're seeing increased referrals from a number of sources, local community agencies, and increased risk factors. When you think about the opioid epidemic, you think about poverty, teen pregnancy, all of these things contribute to us just seeing more people who need services through early intervention. In terms of what we were doing about it, I mean, we certainly recognize that these increased costs play a role in our supplemental and in our growing budget. We've already begun to explore options to encourage more families to enroll their children in the medical assistance early periodic screening, diagnostic, and treatment program to maximize the federal MA funding we might be able to receive to assist here. So we do recognize the increase and are trying to do what we can. We can't mandate that people go on to Medicaid, but we're certainly trying to do what we can to encourage that.
Are we seeing issues with the potential of the department not recognizing how many people are coming onto these programs? So is it an internal issue with your agency trying to reflect how many people are coming on to these programs when we're building budget estimates moving forward? Because if we've been seeing an increase since 2015 and a trend upwards, that probably should be taken account of now rather than when the budget's finalized.
Right, and I think that's one of the reasons that we have the supplemental. I think going forward, we need to make sure that we are taking into account the increases we've seen in the past to reflect that in our growing budget. We do have, as part of our proposal, I think it's $2.5 million for administrative expenses to help the counties deal with this increased services that they're providing. So that is part of our budget this year.
Okay. Medical assistance capitation line item was enacted in the 2019 General Appropriation Act at $2.362 billion. You're now requesting a supplemental appropriations of $165.8 million more, or 7%. Total appropriation of $2.529 billion. And I would add, since the enactment of Senate Bill 432 should provide some cost savings within that line item, as that should save some dollars on the actuarial analysis. But why are we seeing an increase in that? And then what are we doing to try to mitigate those costs moving forward?
So I think the increases we're seeing, and frankly, when you look at our supplemental, the increases we're seeing are directly related to increases in our physical health, behavioral health, and CHC line items. I know you're talking just about capitation. We are seeing increased people that we're serving and increase in services that we're providing. So I think it's always important to remember with DHS, I mean, the majority of our programs are entitlement programs. So when people are eligible for those services, we have to provide provide those services. And certainly with CHC, I mean, one of the biggest cost drivers we're seeing with our budget today, and one of the reasons you see such a big supplemental, is just that we have an aging population. We have more and more seniors who need long-term services and supports. That is the biggest driver, and I think when I think about our budget going forward and concerns I have, that's an issue that's not just an issue for Pennsylvania, it's an issue for the entire country, but we have our parents and our grandparents are outliving their resources, and that is really the biggest driver of our costs.